Wait, what? Josh Duggar is back in the headlines, and this time, it's not just another prison update. In a shocking legal twist, Josh is officially requesting a brand new trial. But the real kicker? He's pointing the finger at someone no one saw coming, his ex-girlfriend's mother. Yes, you heard that right. According to explosive new court filings, Josh claims that the investigation that led to his conviction was tainted from the start because of her. He says she may have played a key role in alerting authorities, influencing the investigation, or even holding a grudge that, in his eyes, turned into a vendetta. But why now? Why, after all this time behind bars, is Josh suddenly reviving his legal fight? And why bring an ex's family into it? This bizarre accusation is shaking up public opinion and raising serious questions about the integrity of the original trial. Legal experts are divided. Some say it's a desperate Hail Mary from a man trying to rewrite history. Others wonder, does he actually have a legal leg to stand on? And the fanbase? Oh, they have thoughts. Duggar watchers, Reddit sleuths, YouTube commentators, and even some of Josh's own family members are weighing in, and not everyone is holding back. In this video, we're unpacking it all. What Josh's appeal actually says. Who this ex-girlfriend and her mother really are. The hidden history that's now resurfacing. And whether there's even a sliver of hope for Josh Duggar's freedom. This isn't just another legal maneuver, it's a bombshell claim that could shake up everything we thought we knew about the case. So grab your seat, because things are about to get wild. Let's rewind for a moment and take a hard look at how we even got here, because Josh Duggar's criminal history isn't just disturbing, it's the foundation for everything unraveling now. In December 2021, Josh Duggar, eldest son of Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar of 19 kids and counting fame, was convicted on 2 counts of receiving and possessing child pornography. The charges stemmed from a 2019 Homeland Security investigation into his workplace computer. Authorities found what the prosecution called some of the worst child abuse material they'd ever seen, downloaded using sophisticated software meant to bypass accountability. The evidence was damning. Federal agents testified that Josh had installed a partition on his computer that allowed him to run a secret operating system, separate from the one his coworkers used. That's where they discovered hundreds of illicit images and videos. A digital forensic analyst even tracked the downloads directly to Josh's IP address and workplace. The defense tried to argue that someone else could have accessed the computer, but the jury didn't buy it. Josh was sentenced to over 12 years in federal prison, 151 months, to be exact, with no possibility of parole. He's currently serving that time at the low-security FCI Segoville in Texas. Public reaction was swift and furious. Fans, critics, and even some members of the Duggar family expressed heartbreak, shock, and outrage. Jill Duggar and her husband Derek Dillard publicly condemned Josh's actions and praised the court for holding him accountable. Jinger Duggar also issued a statement, saying she was grateful justice was served and that her brother's crimes were horrific. But not everyone in the family distanced themselves. Jim Bob and Michelle remained notably quiet, releasing only a vague statement about their trust in the justice system and prayers for all involved. Meanwhile, Josh's wife, Anna Duggar, stood by him, attending every day of the trial and remaining loyal even after his conviction, a decision that sparked widespread backlash and concern. Josh's conviction marked a dramatic fall from grace for someone once branded as the golden boy of conservative Christian reality TV. And now, as he pleads for a new trial, all those dark details are resurfacing, making the stakes even higher. In a bold legal maneuver that's reigniting outrage and fascination in equal measure, Josh Duggar's legal team officially filed a new appeal in 2025, asking the court to throw out his 2021 child pornography conviction and grant him a brand new trial. The appeal isn't just a routine legal challenge. It introduces explosive claims that shift the blame for his conviction in a shocking new direction. Josh's attorneys argue that a critical mistake was made during the original trial, one that they now say unfairly prejudiced the jury against him. This alleged error? The inclusion of testimony from Bobye Holt, a longtime family friend and, crucially, the mother of Josh's ex-girlfriend from his teen years. Bobby's testimony was deeply emotional and damning. She described, under oath, how Josh had admitted to her years earlier that he inappropriately touched several of his sisters. That confession, she said, came when he was courting her daughter. Now, in this new appeal, Josh's team claims that Bobye Holt should never have been allowed to testify. Their argument hinges on whether her conversations with Josh were protected under clergy penitent privilege, a legal safeguard meant to protect confidential spiritual confessions. According to the defense, Josh believed he was confessing in a religious or counseling context, and therefore, Bobby's testimony should have been inadmissible. But the controversy doesn't end there. Josh's legal team goes a step further, suggesting that Bobby had a personal bias or vendetta, possibly rooted in her disapproval of Josh's past relationship with her daughter. They're implying that her testimony was not only improperly admitted, but also motivated by emotion rather than truth, a bombshell accusation that has left many observers stunned. This pivot, to framing Bobye Holt as a key factor in what Josh's team calls a tainted trial, has drawn intense criticism. Legal experts and former Duggar followers alike are pointing out that this strategy may be less about uncovering legal error and more about casting doubt on a credible witness in order to muddy the waters. Still, the court will now have to consider whether Bobby's involvement crossed a legal line, and if so, whether that misstep was enough to warrant a second chance for a man already convicted and sentenced to more than a decade behind bars. Let's now talk about the woman at the center of this stunning twist in Josh Duggar's appeal, Bobye Holt. To fully understand why Josh's legal team is pointing fingers at her, you need to know her history with the Duggar family. Bobye Holt wasn't just some distant acquaintance. She and her husband Jim Holt were deeply entrenched in the Duggar family's inner circle. In fact, the Holts and the Duggars were longtime friends who shared similar ultra-conservative Christian values and were part of the same homeschooling and church communities in Arkansas. For years, they were practically extended family, often appearing at the same events, church gatherings, and even political rallies. Their bond was strong enough that at one point, there was serious talk of Josh marrying Bobby's daughter. Yes, you heard that right. Bobby's daughter and Josh were courting, a term that the Duggars used to describe a pre-engagement, heavily supervised relationship. It was a courtship that never materialized into marriage, and many fans have speculated for years about why it fell apart. But now, in light of the trial and this appeal, there's more context. Fast forward to Josh's 2021 trial, and Bobye Holt re-enters the scene, this time as a key prosecution witness. Her testimony was deeply emotional and incredibly damning. She told the court under oath that Josh personally confessed to her, years ago, about molesting several young girls, some of whom were his own sisters. According to Bobby, Josh admitted these acts during a private conversation when the families were still close and were discussing the possibility of his courtship with her daughter. She stated she was horrified and decided to keep her daughter away from him after that moment. That revelation alone stunned courtroom observers. But even more impactful was how vivid and detailed her recollections were. Legal analysts say that her testimony helped the prosecution frame a chilling pattern of behavior that stretched back decades. And the emotional weight of Bobby's words, especially coming from a long-trusted family friend, may have heavily swayed the jury. And that's exactly what Josh's new legal team is now attacking. In the appeal filed in 2025, Josh's attorneys argue that Bobby's testimony should never have been allowed in the first place. They claim it amounted to prejudicial character evidence, something that, in their view, unfairly influenced the jury by painting Josh as a habitual offender before the evidence from the actual case was even weighed properly. The defense is asserting that her statements were based on past allegations, not the digital evidence related to the child pornography charges, which is what the trial was supposed to be focused on. So how is the Duggar fanbase reacting to this sudden twist? Well, just like everything involving this family, it's deeply divided. Some longtime fans who've followed the family since 19 kids and counting are calling this move desperate. They view Bobye Holt as a whistleblower, someone who had the courage to speak the truth despite personal ties to the Duggars. These viewers say she did the right thing by coming forward, even if it meant exposing dark secrets. Others, especially supporters of Josh or the broader Duggar belief system, are questioning her motives. Some conspiracy-minded commenters online suggest Bobby was bitter about the failed courtship between her daughter and Josh, or had a grudge against the family. A few even claim she should have gone to the authorities earlier, and that by waiting until a high-profile trial, she made it seem like a calculated betrayal rather than a moral stand. But no matter which side you fall on, one thing is clear. Bobye Holt's testimony became a pivotal moment in Josh's conviction, and now it's a major linchpin in his attempt to undo that outcome. What happens next may depend on how the appellate court weighs not just the law, but the emotional impact of a woman who knew Josh well, believed in him once, and then said, under oath, that she saw the warning signs long ago. As Josh Duggar pleads for a new trial and blames his ex-girlfriend's mother, Bobye Holt, the ripple effect across the Duggar family is becoming more intense than ever. Reactions from key family members suggest deep fractures behind the scenes, and the public isn't buying the narrative Josh is trying to sell. Let's start with Anna Duggar, Josh's wife, who has stood by him through thick and thin. Her loyalty has baffled many, especially after the severity of the charges and conviction. But this time, Anna's silence is deafening. She hasn't made any official statements since the new trial motion, but fans noticed she recently unfollowed several Duggar-affiliated pages and removed some past posts referencing the family. It's subtle, but in Duggar world, these online breadcrumbs speak volumes. Could Anna be losing faith, or is she retreating deeper into denial? Then there are Josh's siblings, who continue to walk a tightrope between public image and private turmoil. Jinger, Jill, and even Joanna have all distanced themselves from Josh, particularly after his conviction. Jill and her husband Derek Dillard have been the most outspoken, criticizing the family's handling of the abuse allegations from years ago. While they haven't directly responded to this latest appeal, Derek recently liked a post on Twitter condemning the use of victim-blaming legal tactics. A coincidence? Fans don't think so. But perhaps the most pointed reaction came from Amy Duggar King, Josh's outspoken cousin. Known for breaking ranks and refusing to toe the family line, Amy posted a cryptic Instagram story shortly after the appeal filing made headlines. It read, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. The first time." Followed by a hashtag, "Enough is enough." She didn't name names, but really, she didn't need to. Amy's long made it clear she wants justice for victims and believes Josh deserves to stay behind bars. Her followers immediately connected the dots, flooding her comments with support and their own outrage over the appeal. Outside of the Duggar circle, public opinion is shifting even further. Reddit communities and YouTube commentary channels have erupted with discussions over whether this appeal is a desperate Hail Mary from Josh's legal team, or a strategic distraction to muddy the waters and delay inevitable consequences. Many see it as an attempt to scapegoat Bobye Holt, whose testimony was not only credible but also corroborated by years of known Duggar family history. One Redditor wrote, "It's honestly disgusting that Josh and his team are trying to pin this on a woman who had the guts to speak out. Classic abuser playbook: deny, deflect, and destroy anyone who tells the truth." Another popular YouTube commentator put it bluntly, "This isn't about justice. It's about image control, and the Duggars are losing grip fast." And that brings us to the Duggar brand itself. Once seen as a model of Christian family values, that carefully curated image is in ruins. From Josh's scandals to the growing number of family members leaving the faith, writing memoirs, or calling out the hypocrisy, it's becoming harder and harder for Jim, Bob, and Michelle to maintain control. This latest appeal is just another crack in the already shattered glass. Even longtime fans are beginning to question everything they thought they knew about the Duggars. The days of quiet loyalty are over. The damage? Likely irreversible. Now, let's get into what the legal minds are saying, because no matter how emotional or scandalous the story gets, it all comes down to whether Josh Duggar's legal team can actually convince a federal appeals court to give him a second shot. First, what are the chances of a new trial? According to multiple legal analysts and former federal prosecutors, the odds are not in Josh's favor. Federal courts set a high bar for appeals and retrials, especially in cases involving child exploitation. Josh would have to prove that his original trial was fundamentally unfair due to legal error or misconduct. It's not enough to simply say, this person shouldn't have testified. He needs to demonstrate that Bobby Holt's testimony specifically violated his constitutional rights or introduced bias that swayed the jury unfairly. Let's break down those legal standards a bit. Appeals in federal criminal cases hinge on two main criteria. 1. There must have been a significant legal error. 2. That error must have affected the outcome of the trial. But then comes the twist: Bobby Holt's unique role. She wasn't just a witness. She was a family friend, a former confidant, and a trusted adult figure in Josh's childhood circle. Josh's defense claims that her testimony about past confessions during counseling-like conversations may have crossed ethical lines. They argue it may have been akin to privileged speech, like something said to a pastor or a therapist. But legal experts are split here. One side says, that's a stretch. She was never a licensed counselor. Others argue that her long-standing relationship with the Duggar family might complicate how her statements were viewed in court. And then there's the moral side of the debate. Even if Holt's testimony was legally admissible, some observers are asking, should she have done it? Was it right to come forward so publicly after years of silence, especially considering the emotional trauma to both families? But supporters of Bobby argue she did the only thing she could, that by speaking up, she helped protect future victims and gave the jury deeper insight into Josh's history of predatory behavior. As one legal commentator put it, this wasn't a witch hunt. It was about painting a full, truthful picture for the jury. Bottom line? Unless Josh's attorneys can show a clear, procedural mistake that directly changed the verdict, federal courts are unlikely to overturn the conviction. Appeals aren't about retrying the case. They're about proving the trial itself was fundamentally broken. And so far, the evidence just isn't pointing that way. But this legal drama is far from over. And with the Duggar name involved, public interest isn't going anywhere. So, what happens next in this legal roller coaster? Well, that largely depends on whether the appellate court believes Josh Duggar's team has presented a compelling enough case for a new trial. Right now, his lawyers are banking on the argument that Bobby Holt's testimony was both inappropriate and unfairly damaging, suggesting that it overstepped the boundaries of what should have been allowed in court. But just because a motion is filed doesn't mean it'll be granted. Will the appeal go through? It's a long shot. In federal cases, especially those involving criminal convictions, appeals are rarely successful. Judges tend to defer to the original jury and trial process unless there's a clear and undeniable miscarriage of justice. Josh's team is trying to convince the court that Bobby Holt's statements directly influenced the jury's perception and therefore the final verdict. But even with a controversial witness, appellate courts generally require a much higher burden of proof to overturn a conviction. What happens if Josh wins or loses? If the court does grant the motion and allows a retrial, everything reopens. Witnesses would be called again. Evidence would be reintroduced. The prosecution would need to rebuild their case, while the defense would get another shot to poke holes in it, likely with tighter control over which witnesses and testimony are allowed. It could also mean more public scrutiny for the Duggar family as everything resurfaces. But if he loses the motion, which many experts say is the more likely outcome, he'll remain in prison to finish out the rest of his 12-year sentence. That means he wouldn't be released until around 2033, assuming no further reductions for good behavior or other factors. How long could this drag on? This appeal could take months or even years to fully resolve. The appeals court isn't in any rush. They'll likely schedule oral arguments, request written briefs, and thoroughly examine the original trial record. In the meantime, Josh remains incarcerated, and the Duggar family, especially Anna, are left in limbo. And speaking of Anna Duggar, this entire process has taken an undeniable emotional toll on her and their 7 children. She's remained publicly loyal to Josh, even visiting him regularly and reportedly still believing in his innocence. But with every new legal filing, every motion, and every media headline, the weight of this fight seems to grow heavier. Raising a family virtually alone, with no clear timeline for closure, can't be easy. If Josh loses this appeal, Anna may be forced to finally face a harsh reality that he's not coming home anytime soon. But if he wins, well, That opens the door to even more pain and chaos, with another public trial that would force the Duggar name back into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. And there you have it, Josh Duggar's latest legal Hail Mary, a plea for a brand new trial based on claims that his ex-girlfriend's mother, Bobye Holt, tipped the scales unfairly. It's a bold and frankly desperate strategy, especially considering the mountain of evidence from the original trial. But it shows just how far Josh and his legal team are willing to go to challenge his 12-year sentence. Meanwhile, this move is yet another crack in the already fractured Duggar legacy. What was once presented as a squeaky clean, faith-based family empire continues to unravel in real time, leaving fans shocked, critics saying, "I told you so," and the rest of the Duggars caught in the fallout. So, what do you think? Is this appeal just a last-ditch effort? Or does Josh have a real legal leg to stand on? And what does this mean for Anna and the kids, who've stayed quiet through it all? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you think justice still matters, and don't forget to subscribe for more breaking updates on the Duggars and beyond. Because with this family, the story is never truly over.